Welcome back to Midway Business Podcast, where we dive into conversations with real business leaders about what truly drives success. I'm Jimmy DeMambro, co-host filling in for Butch Zemar while he is out. Today's guest is Keith Lewis, who has coached leaders for over 20 years, but his path is different, where he started in a non-typical fashion. Before all that, he was literally a mascot for both Northwestern College and the Chicago Bulls, what gives him a very different perspective on leadership, and especially when reading the room. He also is the author of a new book called Sparking Your Inner Leader. Keith, welcome to the show.
Woohoo! Thanks, Jimmy. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yes. So we're going to jump right into it. If you can, just tell us and the listeners here what you do and on a simple term so they just can kind of grasp a little bit more.
Yeah, sure. Since about 2001, I started my own business called VeraSpark. And what I do is I do a combination of executive and leadership coaching, helping my clients kind of increase their effectiveness. That's really my niche. And then secondly, what I do is I do some facilitating and also, speaking workshops around the topics of leadership, teamwork. I kind of grew out of experiential learning. So I really do my best to engage my audiences in the conversation. And that's how I spend my time. It's a great job. If you can do it, I highly encourage it.
Sounds great. The from the book in regards to my intro, tell us more about the connection between mascots and leaders. It's a fascinating connection, and I'd like to learn more, and I'm sure the listeners would like to hear a little bit more as well.
Yeah, when I talk about this, I kind of, have the great mascots and great leaders circle, and I talk about the overlap, but I do want to be clear, they don't completely overlap. I do
Yeah.
not encourage leaders to do some things that mascots do, and certainly some mascots don't do what great leaders and effective leaders do. But yeah, I showed up at Northwestern back in the early 80s when they were in the process of setting the record for the most losses for a Division I football team. Tried out as a freshman, got the job for Willie the Wildcat, and just loved it. It was a great job, so much fun, so many great people that I met, so great to go out and represent the university. And then when I graduated, I went to work downtown Chicago at Leo Burnett Advertising. I was a media buyer planner, and I got a call from a guy who worked at the Chicago Bulls, and he used to work at Northwestern, and he said, "Do you have any interest in being Benny the Bull?" I said, for sure. So Michael Jordan's about a year older than me. So it was, fun to be, I could say I was on the court with me and Michael Jordan. And what happened was, if you fast forward about, 25 years or so, or maybe it wasn't that long, maybe about 16 years, I kind of, as I was coaching leaders, I kept coming back to, I remember I learned something about that as a mascot. And then there's something else would come up and I'd go, I learned about blind spots when I was a mascot. And I learned about feedback when I was a mascot. And I learned about representing organizations when I was a mascot. So I kind of wrote some articles and jotted down some things. And then I got serious and started interviewing mascots and leaders that I had worked with. And then, I don't know, 20 years later, there's a book out now that's called Sparking Your Inner Leader. And it's a lot of fun, but it's really a practical guide for effective leadership.
That is an amazing journey for sure.
Yeah.
And, like I had mentioned in the intro, commanding the room, I mean, that must have been a lot of fun. But I'm assuming hot, right? Inside those costumes, just the same.
Yeah, for sure.
One of the questions we like to discuss on this show, because I do think it's important leaders understand their why, especially not only with themselves but with their company. Can you dive a little deeper into, why do you do what you do? Aside from, making money and surviving, talk a little bit about the core purpose behind what you do in regards to consulting and being a coach.
Yeah. I mean, I think I could sum it up pretty succinctly in I feel like one of the reasons I was put on earth was to help other people achieve their potential. So whether that's leaders or teams or organizations, I really spent my time learning and growing and developing myself in a way that I could support others in their development, so that they can become more effective and also so that they can make their teams and organizations more effective. And I love doing it. And when you see it happen, especially in a coaching
Yeah.
engagement over a period of time, watching your clients, increase their leadership effectiveness by 30 percentile points as we measure it on some of the tools, it's phenomenal. And they're just, they light up. You can see that they're using their gifts to do what they want to do and to be passionate about what they want to do in their lives.
That is probably an awesome feeling, at the end of the day. And I'm sure you have a lot of, speaking events and talk to a lot of audiences, especially the one-on-one. What, do they usually walk away remembering when it comes to, the things you provide them in reaching their potential?
Wow, that's a great question. There's like 10 things pop into my head. Because in coaching, I will say it's very customized and individualized to the need of the client. But if I had to back away from that at a high level, I would say a couple of things that rise up. Number one is, especially when it's leaders, to remind them that they are the representation of the organization. um, if you think about it, you've been like a customer experience leader, right? That's what you've
Hmm.
done in your career, Jimmy.
Yes,
And you've worked with teams and you've also been led by people. I mean, tell me if this is your experience, but when you look at the person who's leading you, don't you feel like they're the person that's kind of the representation of the organization you're at?
absolutely. I think it always comes from the top down. And especially in today's day and age with the challenges of the marketplace, I do feel leaders may get sucked into those challenges and don't realize that their representation is showing, that they may be scared or vulnerable, and sometimes I think that's a good thing. They should be authentic. But yeah, I absolutely agree.
Yeah. And that's one of those analogies that came straight out of my mascotting days. And I had to learn a couple of times the hard way that when I was in the Willie the Wildcat suit, that I wasn't Keith Lewis anymore. I was Willie the Wildcat, and I was representing Northwestern University, not just the football team, but all of athletics, all of the university. And there are things you shouldn't do when you're in the suit if you're a representation of an organization, just like leaders should be
Right.
attention to what they're doing and what they should not be doing when they are the leaders of these organizations. So that's probably one of the things I would say. And another big piece is I feel like I help my clients really get clarity on who they want to be and how they want to show up. So the tools that I use when I coach people, first of all, give them a very clear picture of how they are being perceived currently. So they know what they're doing that's working and what may not be working. And then I help them from that point get clarity on how is it you really want to be in the world? How do you want to show up as a leader? Let's get super clear on that through a series of like core values and guiding principles. And then let's go execute against that in a development plan so that we can start practicing. Hey, here's how I want to show up in the world. And that's where, again, that power comes from when people realize, wow, I've been showing up this way, and that's not who I want to be. I want to be this. And then they go practice, and it's amazing.
It sounds like the challenge and correct me if I'm wrong, but being a brand guy, in my career, a lot of times I would always face the CEO as the personality of the company, which then would reflect in the brand. Sometimes not though. So I would assume you're also being challenged on personable personality type of issues they may have or want to, change amongst themselves, but then also representing the company. Is it truly the CEO or a leader, or is it something else that they want to bring to the customer?
Yeah.
And it's an inner battle, I would assume, that you're always facing with leaders.
Yeah. And I mean, I just thought of the example if you remember the McDonald's CEO with the taking the bite out of the big arch recently, did you see
Yes. Yeah.
flack that he got? And of course, he's had some fun with it himself as well, as have the other brands in his industry. But you know, I really see that I would love to hear what you think from a customer experience, but customer experience, for sure it's the CEO and their personality and who they are. But if they think about who I want to be, and then we're also doing that all the way down the organization, right? So the
Mhm.
head of sales, the COO, the CFO, even though they might not be customer facing in many places, or just the head of accounting, still to be thinking about how do I want to show up in terms of how I want to deliver services, how I want to earn my keep, how I want to grow myself into my career, how I want to develop other people, whatever that might be. It's so important. And absolutely, we can look at different brands to see we know who's delivering on that promise of who they want to be and who's not. I mean, we as customers,
Right.
you probably have a litany of lists of people who are definitely showing up that way. And then here's the people that say they are, but they're not showing up the way they want.
Yeah, I do agree, and I think it's extremely being challenged right now in the tough economy. And like you said, there's a plethora of places you could probably list, but not as many as it used to be in regards to customer service. And, from the top down, I believe that's where it starts. And if, the people below can't believe in the leader and trust the leader, it's going to exude out to the customer. And I think that's where we're being challenged is customer service.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's definitely a challenge right now. And, in regard to that, I mean, it's something you're working with one-on-one as well as with teams. What do you say to them in regards to a challenging situation like we are in right now with the economy? um, and seeing all the companies suffering and laying off and all these things, everyone seems to be vulnerable in regards to being stressed, and you could see it from the top down, and then it starts to exude downward and hurts the morale. But how can they snap out of it? Any techniques you have that you can share with the listeners that kind of reassigns their paradigm to, share with themselves as well as how it affects the team?
Yeah, I'll share with you something that a gentleman by the name of Bob Anderson, who runs the Leadership Circle. It's one of the companies that I have worked with closely. They've developed tools that allow people to really understand their leadership effectiveness. And I've worked with Bob with a couple of clients and also been trained by him on many things. And they now have, hundreds of thousands of people that have rated people on a 360 assessment. He has tons of data. And what Bob basically what he gave me was this question, which was, what do I want to create? So, what you're talking about, Jimmy, is there are all these things happening in the world. There's all these outside things. And as human beings, what our first, what our wiring to do, the first thing is to keep ourselves safe, right? I could go into all the way the brain works, and I know just
Yeah.
to be dangerous probably, but that's what we're doing is we're trying to stay safe. So we do things like we take control, or we become complicit, or we just maybe sometimes distance ourselves from the situation and try to ignore it, hoping it'll go away. There's lots of reactions, but there's a difference between staying safe and transforming into what is it I'm here to create. Because when you ask, how do I stay safe? You start doing things that just make you safe. When you ask, what is it I'm here to do? What am I trying to create with my business? What am I trying to create for my customers? What am I trying to create with my employees or my partners or my contractors? That answer to that question drives us towards an outcome that is not just about saying stay safe. It's about achievement. It's about getting to something. And it doesn't matter if you're for profit, nonprofit, government, whatever that entity is. But if we understand what we're trying to create and keep that in front of us, that question can help us all the time. I mean, let me just give you one quick example. Are you going to have a meeting with a client coming up this week, or with a partner that you work with?
Yep.
Just before you go to that meeting, and anyone can do this, any meeting you have coming up, think about, what do I want to create in the meeting? And it might be, hopefully it's more than just one answer, but it might be, I want to get the sale. I want to get the business. But it could also be, I want to demonstrate value. It could also be, I want to build our relationship and bring us to even a different type of level of relationship. And it can be all three of those at the same time. So when I have that in my brain, these are the three things I want to create in the meeting. I can go into the meeting and start off by going, hey, Jimmy, there's a few things I'd love to do here today. Number one, I just want to get to know you better. And I just want to have a better relationship with you. Who knows where that might lead? And that's just one of the things I do. Number two is I'd like to get your business, right? And you can use that as the framework, and then you can build your meeting agenda based on what you want to create.
I like that. And just so I'm understanding, are you using the rule of threes? Because I'm a huge fan of the rule of threes.
Yeah, I think the rule of threes is a great thing to do. It's simple. It's easy for people to remember.
Yeah.
You say, here are the three C's, or the three L's, or whatever
Yeah.
that you might use.
A new acronym.
Yeah. Acronyms, what is it? One of my customers says, do you like TLAs? I was like, what is a TLA? So it's a 3-letter acronym. I was like, okay, that's good. I like that, So for sure, I think keeping those things simple, but
Right.
it's focused on, it's really broadening your perspective of, there's not just one outcome to this. I think we often think about, did I just get the sale? But it's about the sale and the relationship, and the future referrals that are going to come from developing that. I mean, if you think broader about what you really want to create in any moment, event, program, product launch, etc., I think you'll be better set for a longer term future. It also keeps you away from, hey, where gas is at $4 a gallon, or whatever the current issue is that may be a real issue for your business. But when you keep thinking, it doesn't matter what gas is, I'm still trying to create this.
Yeah,
And
it's funny you mentioned gas, because ours here, at least in Chicago, is close to $5, and I'm like, what just happened? Right? It hits you so quickly.
Yeah.
But I like that, because it definitely infringes on challenges of the word control, and kind of taking a step back and breathing, and kind of really methodically thinking this through a little bit. One of the things that I have seen, and I'm curious on your perspective with this, is, call it 40 years ago, leadership was a certain way, and today it's a different way. Can you talk a little bit with the listeners in regards to what you're seeing in regards to the differences, especially from your the guided principles inside your book?
Yeah. Yeah, you bet. So there's a couple of things. One is, we certainly grew up probably in a much more hierarchical type of environment. Was it you that were you in the Navy at some point?
No, that's actually Butch.
Oh, that was Butch. Okay.
Yeah, Butch.
Yeah. So, any armed forces, government, it's fairly hierarchical. And that's the way a lot of businesses were modeled in the 80s, 90s. And now, as we've seen the 2000s, the 2010s, and the 2020s come along, people are playing with different models of what's effective. And there are some good things about certain parts of hierarchies, but a lot of leadership is now being distributed. It's being owned by more people. It's a more collaborative workspace, I would say, in general, as we get this next generation that comes up that's used to being asked, what do you think? We can all add value here. So I think it's a bit more distributed from that perspective. And in terms of, again, the guiding principle work that I do, what I'm trying to help individuals figure out is, how do I want to show up in this environment? And therefore, how do I want to lead? Even a hierarchical leader that I've worked with a number of those who are kind of control freaks, right? Asking them, is that who you really want to show up as? Is that helping you get to where you want to go? And there are parts of them that say, yes, absolutely. When I take control, we make the sale. And then we talk about, well, I had a CEO client who was the head of sales, moved to CEO, but he kept jumping back into sales. And I said, when you do that, you're getting the sale, right? He says, yeah, that's the fantastic thing. And I said, but what's happening in terms of who's now the CEO while you're in sales?
Yeah.
And also, who's being developed as sales if you're still the salesperson or the head of sales? So he transitioned. He said, I know what I want to become now. I want to become CEO.
Hmm.
And he started to really look at, how do I bring people along? So if he's going to go into a sales call or close a big client, he's going to take people with him. And he's going to say, I'm developing you because you're going to be the one who's making this close the next time or in 2 more times. You're going to watch me 2 times and then you're going to be the one doing it. So he really morphed because of who he wanted to be and how he wanted to show up.
Very, very interesting. I've heard it on my journey a few times now. It's, are you working in the company or are you running the company?
Right.
Right? Are you going to take a vacation or not take a vacation? And that's tough, especially if you're the founder and you have some sort of, passion for the product or service you provide. And, as an entrepreneur, I've had to ask that question to myself as well.
That's
One of the things that is out there in the marketplace, and I'm sure you've been in the conversation plenty of times, but it's something that I do believe strong that still needs to be talked about. And I just wanted to hear your angle and your thoughts on artificial intelligence. Yes, there's
yeah.
a lot of people talk about on one side taking jobs. Then there's others that say, nope, automation. What are you feeling? What are you seeing with leadership? And how do you feel about where AI is heading?
Yeah. So let me preface this. I'm not an AI specialist, right? That's not my niche of the world, but I certainly am seeing it. I'm talking about it. I'm in meetings where my clients are talking about it, where my partners are talking about it. I'm using it. So, I think we all know by now, AI is not going anywhere. It's
Right.
here to stay. And if you haven't started thinking about, how can I integrate this into my business, go get started, take a class, lots of free things online, or go find an online course. And, even in my business, for example, there was a gentleman that offered a course. It was AI for coaches. Great course, that he did over a period of 2 days. So go find that AI class, first of all, and get yourself educated. I mean, like, literally sign up this week or next, because you need to know what's happening out there. It's moving so fast that I'm not sure any of us can keep up unless you're Sam Altman or, running one of these companies that is,
Right.
doing this. So we've got to keep up. What I'm seeing is, I know there is a lot of concern that it's taking over some businesses, some companies. It's going into the coaching business. People are using it as their coaches, as their therapists. So we're definitely seeing that. I think as it is right now, AI still is not a human being, right?
Yep.
Still can't quite empathize the way that a human can. It can certainly think, given all the data points you load into it, but it doesn't have some of the gut that humans still have. So I think there's still obviously a place for us, and we're the ones currently that are writing the prompts. So there is absolutely a place for humans. I don't think we're going to be an AI world, at least yet, where we're just going to be sitting on the beach or relaxing while all the robots and computers do things, but maybe that day is coming. So I would say that it's definitely going to have an impact. I would also encourage leaders to really think about, how do you want to use it that, again, is going to get you to what you want to create. And we need to think about the guardrails. we need to think about, what's the ethical use of this? What's the appropriate use of this? We saw Anthropic just recently not release one of their AI tools because it can find all the ways to get into different businesses and unlock things. And Anthropic said, we're not going to release this to everybody because we don't want people to start using it and unlocking bank accounts and investment accounts and, all these other things that are private. Hopefully we'll have governments, we'll have leaders of organizations step up and say, look, we've got to be appropriate about the guardrails that we're going to put up and how we're going to use this appropriately. It's just like any tool. I can use a hammer to build a house and I can use a hammer to
Yeah.
break somebody's toe.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I like how you brought the ethical perspective into it. I'm in the same camp as you say empathy and I say feelings. And ultimately, those two things are not there because I have tried pushing it as far as I could go, especially being from a marketing side and a creative. You need to develop things that are based on emotion, and emotion is what people buy. I just don't think artificial intelligence is there for that, and I don't know if it ever will be. And it's I do like how you are sharing with the listeners how to jump in and start to play and to figure out how it can help you. When it comes to daily habits for you, you get up in the morning. Everyone has a certain pattern or path. Anything that you do that you could share with the listeners here that you do to help you on your day? It
Yeah.
could be walk the dog or get a cup of coffee, but it also could be some sort of affirmation. But anything you do with software, anything that could really help the listeners kind of scratch their head and say, maybe I should think about doing something like that or something similar.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'll give you three ideas, three things that, I think one of them is more subconscious or unconscious. But you mentioned software. I mean, I think definitely, I think we should think about our businesses as if we're going to franchise them. That's an idea that came out of a book called The E-Myth Revisited, I think from probably decades ago. But even you and I, as independents, just running our own businesses or people who are running businesses, if you think about, I'm going to franchise this like a McDonald's or like a Starbucks. If you're going to do that, you start looking at your business thinking, how can I replicate what I'm just doing? How can I created a contract. How can I use that contract with another client, another client? So it's how do I not have to recreate the wheel every time I do my business and think about how am I going to franchise this business? What process would I try to automate or make simple? I use a CRM, for example. Not a lot of coaches or trainers use CRMs.
Hmm.
I think it's beautiful. It's wonderful. I am so on top of all of my clients, my prospects, who's interested, who said call me in a year, and I call them in a year and they're like, "Oh my gosh, you remembered. Uh, we actually have a conference coming up. Can you come and help us?" So
Yeah.
it plays out, right? So that's one. Two is, I know I keep referring to guiding principles, but in my work, what I do is I have people write out who they want to be, how they want to show up in some sentences that are action oriented. So, for example, this is my set. I keep them in front of me. So, I might say, I mentioned as invited personally or professionally, I support others in their journeys. So that's one of the things of how I want to show up. What that means, though, is I look at this on a regular basis and I don't just go, yeah, that's a great idea. I think, who can I support today? Who's on a journey that I know about? And I could just pick up the phone and say, hey, how's it going? Or I see something on LinkedIn, somebody's looking for a job. I reach out to them on LinkedIn and say, hey, what are you looking for? And if I know someone, let me know, I'll introduce you. So I take the guiding principle of how I want to show up and I think about what can I do today to implement it. And I don't do it with all 10 of my guiding principles. I'll just pick one a day. I'm not overwhelm myself, right?
Right.
And then the third thing I'll mention, Jimmy, just because again, this was like somebody gave this gift to me years ago. they just suggested a meditation practice. And I know that sounds kind of, people are like, oh, some people are like, oh, that's weird. Some people are like, I've tried it and I couldn't quite get it. And I was the same. I was like, I don't know, that seems strange. And then I tried it and I was like, what am I doing? I'm just sitting here, what is
Right.
this of my time? But I kept with it, and I have ebbed and flowed in my lifetime. I think last year I went 200 some odd days in a row meditating for at least 10 or 15 minutes a day. This year, I'm not at that level, but I'm still meditating on a fairly regular basis.
Hmm.
And the reason I do it is it causes me to stop and just to practice a few things. The couple things I practice are being present, being here in this moment. And the other thing I practice is just gratitude. And there are plenty of tools out there in the world to support you learning how to practice, what to do, etc. Lots of people that do this that are really good at it. And I find that it just serves me in my business because anything that happens, all I can, if I'm seeing myself get frustrated or maybe my blood pressure is going up, I can just take
Hmm.
3 breaths because I know that when I take 3 nice deep breaths, I'm calming my nervous system. I'm going to be able to access my brain in a different way than I was when I was getting all hyped up. And it's really served me well.
That is awesome to hear. I've tried it myself, and it's something, I've done, I believe in, and I've also heard from others, including yourself, that it does wonders. And, if it's meditation or prayer, I do think, it's beyond us and ultimately something that can support us, especially when we're by ourselves, right?
Yeah.
You don't have somebody there, and it's something that you can look to kind of get through those moments. Um, Tell me a little bit more about like making mistakes on your journey. What have you learned about making a mistake, and how did you get through it? It really comes off of meditation. And I think
Yep.
hopefully that was part of your life in that moment. But nonetheless, I know a lot of listeners, small or medium sized businesses that, every day is a possible mistake. What can you say how to approach those, and what have you learned in your journey as making a mistake?
Yeah. Hang on. Let me go get my wife because she'll be a lot better.
Yeah, I'll get mine too.
Hang on downstairs. I'll go grab her. No, it's a great question. And I mean, I've made so many mistakes, and I'm sure I've made mistakes that I don't even know what mistakes I've made. I'm sure I've damaged relationships. I'm sure I've lost opportunities, etc. I think for me, what some of the big learning has been around recognizing and realizing that I have blind spots. There are things that I didn't know that I was doing. And it took someone, well, not only did it take someone to make me aware of it, but I also had to lower my ego and my defenses to be able to accept that feedback. So I I really feel like one of the big lessons I've had in my life is if somebody comes up to you and says, I'd like to give you some feedback, of course that raises our, again, we get our
Yeah,
nervous goes a little like, oh, what I do? And, we get a little,
right.
and again, taking a few breaths and opening my mind and saying, this is an opportunity for me to see myself as someone else is experiencing me. And that's super important. So,
Hmm.
allowing them to give me that feedback and even learning, I mean, like maybe they deliver it not in such a great way. They may deliver it with a lot of anger. They may deliver it with some, jabs. They may deliver it, not very clean, not very clear. But whatever that is, help them to work through that to say, I hear what you're saying. I know you're angry too, kind of here's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing that this is the nugget you want me to walk away with, or I'm hearing this. I don't, by the way, have to agree with what
Yeah.
they said, but I do have to accept that that's their experience. And when I accept that that's their experience, I'm validating them. I say thank you, which is going to help them hopefully know that I'm open to more feedback. So if there are more blind spots, I'll get that information in the future. Because if I'm defensive, they're not going to come back to me. They're going to go, yeah,
Right.
he needs some feedback, but he didn't want to hear it. So they're never going to come back to me. So
Yeah.
I think that's a big piece of it.
It sounds like that is something for especially a leader must hear in this day and age, because if it goes back to the 40 years of how leaders used to be, that would never most likely happen, right? You might be out of a job. But I also think, and it's a question for you, is, when you say lower the ego, you're almost becoming authentic in that point. And I think, the team itself needs to look at a leader with authenticity, but also know that they're there not only for support, but they're going to do the job of leading them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, with so many challenges in this day and age of, like you said, gas and will I have a job tomorrow? What are you seeing the biggest problems leaders are facing today?
Yeah. Well, certainly, as you mentioned, the economy, AI is putting a lot of pressure on leaders. I think performance, we've become good, bad, and otherwise here in the United States. We're a lot about performance in the stock market,
Right.
and there's all those kinds of pressures. And you said back at the beginning of this podcast, you said, "God, it must be hot in the mascot suit," right? And that is true. It's super hot. You lose, you could lose 4 to 7 pounds in a football game being in a mascot suit. But I again use that as that's one of the chapters in the book. It's called "Is It Hot in There?" because it's the same for leaders. We're under a tremendous amount of pressure, and it is difficult, and there are challenges, and various industries have various challenges. There are industries that are having difficulty finding good people. Uh,
Right.
Despite the fact that, we could say, oh, unemployment might be high, but there are many clients that are just they're losing some of their specialized engineers and
Mm-hmm.
having a hard time replacing those people. So I think, again, it's focused on what is it I'm trying to achieve, but also like what are the pieces of that? I think when we just get focused on money, money is one of our yardsticks, but it's not all the yardsticks. And you've probably know people that, I mean, I know quite a few people that have a lot of money, but that doesn't mean they're happy,
Right.
right?
Agreed. Yep.
So they may be happier when they had money, but they also have an amazing family unit. And the way they got that is they had a choice at some point to, hey, I can make more money, finish this little project, or I can go watch my kids' softball game, later today. And they made the choice to go to the softball game. So they gave up on some money. But guess what? Now they have still money in
Yeah.
the family unit, right?
Yeah. I think COVID really pushed people to kind of see that. And I was blessed in regards to being in the core nucleus and my family getting closer in that moment. And the flip side, you see a lot of people that lost property, lost, millions of dollars. And it was an interesting up and down ride.
Yeah.
But you look back at that. I mean, not that I ever want to live it again, but there was a lot of good that came out of it too.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody wants to talk about the bad. I had children, that were going to school on an iPad, and mom and dad had to be lunch lady, teacher. Like we were running around the house. It's recess time, and
Yeah.
but at the same time, I want to say it was a lot of fun, and we got closer.
Absolutely.
It's the perspective, I think, how you look at it, for sure. Um, Key takeaways, maybe one, maybe two, maybe three. We'll go with the rule of threes if you would like. What can you tell the listeners, piece of advice to take away from our conversation?
Yeah. I think the number one thing, and Jimmy, you and I know this, and we see this even with our customers, like I'm sure you've seen this in the client experience. I talk about core values and guiding principles, and you should write these down and look at them. Everybody agrees with me, but what I find is very few people actually go through the steps of writing down. In the book, I give kind of 4 steps to getting to guiding principles. Super easy. It just takes some time, but very few people actually go through the 4 steps, write down their guiding principles,
Mm-hmm.
and then use them and then start to look at them. because it's just like anything. It's like our golf game. I can go get a lesson, but if I don't practice what the golf instructor told me, I'm not going to get better. And we're not going to get better at living into who we are if we don't actually write it out and actually practice it. So that's the number one thing. If people walk away from this and don't do anything, write down your guiding principles. I'll give you my contact information at the end. Email me your guiding principles. I'll give you feedback. I mean, I'm here to help. And I can see it with my clients that do the work versus the ones that kind of nod their head and go, that was a good idea. The ones who do the work, they're the ones who are more effective. They're living happier.
Right. I love
That's
that.
the takeaway. The second one I would say is, I mean, unless you're not a human, which most people I think listening to this will be, we've all got blind spots. So just be okay with that. And therefore, once you can, you can agree that that's the case, open yourself up to hearing what these people have to say about how they experience you. And granted, it may be a little bit about them, but there's definitely going to be a piece that's about you because that's why they want to tell you. That's why they want to talk to you about it. So get a little curious, temporarily put your ego at the side and figure out what those blind spots are. And then the third thing I would say is, and it's tied to the guiding principles, but just keep asking, what is it I want to create here? When you go sit down at dinner with your family, what do I want to create at dinner tonight? Do I want to have some fun? Do we want to have some laughs? Do we want to talk about something that might challenge all of us? Whatever. What do I want to create in the meeting? What do I want to create this morning when I sit down and write the strategic plan? Whatever it is, just that question, what is it I want to have happen here? And expand the thinking around that. I think that would help.
I love it. I love it. Those are some great suggestions. So many great suggestions. Keith, thanks for spending the time with us today. This was packed with great takeaways, and I know our listeners will appreciate and take a lot away from this conversation. If any of the listeners would like to reach out to you directly, which is the best way?
Yeah, I would say the two best ways are LinkedIn. Keith D. Lewis is my, I think LinkedIn, Keith D. Lewis, you look for that or look for Vera Spark. You'll find me on LinkedIn. I'm posting, at least weekly on there. And my email address, Keith, Keith, at veraspark.com. Love to hear from you. Would love to see your guiding principles, and I will absolutely give you feedback. So if you send those to me, go through the 4 steps of the book. And if you don't have the book, either get the book on Amazon, it's right there, or any of your favorite bookstores, or send me a note and we'll figure out a way to get a book in your hands and then go through chapter 2 of that book. Send me your guiding principles. I want to help you succeed.
Thanks again, Keith. I'm definitely going to grab the book. Once again, the new book is Sparking Your Inner Leadership. We'll see you next time on the Midway Business Podcast. Take care.
Thanks, Jimmy.